Now, I've come here to talk about the experience that I had at the end of January, because I have a very, very strong opinion that when I was in the Royal Victoria Hospital going through ED at the end of January, I eventually, when I was put in a bed, I was moved to the City Hospital because there was a possibility I was going to die, and they didn't want me to be amongst the figures for people who were dying at this time in the Royal Victoria Hospital. Now, that is a terrible thing to say, but I believe that, and if someone will explain to me that it isn't true, I will accept if they give me, a good reason that it's not true. I emailed the Minister and spoke very, very strongly about what had happened to me. What I got was an email back asking me to explain my case. Well, that was the end of me even bothering. Then I heard on the radio about how your investigation was going to take place, and I knew that I had to have the opportunity to speak out. And so immediately, even though I was still ill in bed, I knew I had to phone and tell. This was a chance for me to speak out and say what happened, and that's why I'm delighted to come here. Now, obviously now I can tell you what happened to me. First of all, my medical condition, even though people keep saying to me, oh, you look very well, etc. My name is Deirdre Dougal, and I am 65 years of age. In fact, I'm coming 66. The one thing I have about the National Health Service is that they insist upon calling me a geriatric. And I am a geriatric whether I like it or not. And when I go to A&E or when I go into a ward, they immediately refer to me as this geriatric, and I say things to them like, please don't put me with old people. Please don't put me with old people. But because I was put with old people, I saw some terrible things happen to old people that should never happen, that their relatives are not aware of, and that I am going to speak out and tell about what I saw, because I think that's very important. And that's why I'm encouraging other people who have had experiences with their uncles, grannies, aunties, because I am a geriatric, but all the rest of you are going to be geriatrics at some stage, and you won't like it. Definitely not. Geriatrics are old people who have quite a lot of complicated illnesses, because obviously when you've lived a length of time, you're not hardly going to be in the peak of health. I have my medical condition. When I spoke to my doctor and asked him what it was, he told me that it was complex comorbidities, which effectively means that all the illnesses I have interact, and the morbidities means that one of them is going to kill me, So, when I'm presented at the hospital like that, nobody knows what to do with me. Nobody knows really what's wrong with me. And quite often I would get a really silly doctor coming and saying to me, what's wrong with you? And obviously my automatic response is that I want to say, but surely it's you're supposed to tell me what's wrong with me, that's your job. But because I have these complex illnesses, nobody seems to want to be bothered to deal with me holistically.
Yeah. Just when you first went to the
emergency
department, what were you presenting with? Take us through just what happened.
Because of an experience that I had had just before Christmas, I had said I am never going back to A&E. Because of what I'd seen and what I experienced, I was never going to go back. Now, for that reason, I will accept that I put off going to A&E for as long as possible at the end of January. So when I went to A&E, I was critically ill. And initially, after a bit of faffing about at the beginning, I ended up in resuscitation. And one of the things that I would say is the fact that as a diabetic, all of the drips and all of whatever I needed were put into my feet. Well, that really wasn't very medically correct, because diabetics' feet are very important, and it's still impacting on me now. I was put into resuscitation. There were some policemen walking about with guns and discussing a patient who had been diabetic and hadn't taken his insulin, and he'd been drinking, etc. I heard things, but I was so ill I couldn't even speak, couldn't do anything. No one ever once said to me what was wrong with me. No one ever. My children were put into the relatives' room and they were told that I was critically ill. I then remember hearing a nurse say, let's look at the chest x-ray. And I saw her putting my chest x-ray up into the machine with the lights up, and I heard her saying, oh, that doesn't look too bad, we'll move her. Well, I was moved, and I lay on the trolley for 17 hours before I saw a doctor. Now, I know the doctor's name who came and saw me, and he immediately said, get her to a ward now. And I was in a bed in a ward within 3 minutes.
Sorry, was that after 17 hours?
Yeah. Lying on a trolley, totally unconscious, unaware of what was going on. If I could say to you medically, I had an infection marker, it's called CRP, which indicates how you have infection. Because of the diseases that I have, I would tend to get an infection and then it spreads around to every part of my body, and I end up with septicemia. So for that reason, the very first indicator you would get, which can be done with a simple blood test, is what this marker is. My marker was 200. It is supposed to be around about 4. Well, now, you know, that in itself indicates how critically ill I was. But I mean, I wasn't able to communicate that with anybody because I wasn't taking my own blood. I assumed that they'd be taking my blood, they would be taking charge of everything and dealing with me.
Can I ask you, just to get, again, some clarity?
Yeah.
A couple of questions. When you arrived, what time of the day was it?
This is another issue. It was a Sunday night, and it would have been about 9 o'clock, 9:15. Now, I had been lying in bed home for at least a week, 10 days, and I was getting iller and iller. And I knew that I was dying, and I knew I had to go to hospital. And as I said to you, because of experiences that I had seen previously, my last time going through A&E, I had sworn I would never go back. But I did go back. I would now say I definitely won't go back. I'm going to die at home in my own bed.
And the day you arrived, was it very busy? You said you were moved from a sort of side ward onto a trolley.
Now, if you are critically ill, you really are not aware of what's going on. I mean, any information I would have come from my children, who are very attentive, and they would have been up, you know, trying to see how I was, coming up early in the morning. They were able to tell me the time I was moved up to a ward. I couldn't keep any recollection of, you know, time, place, or whatever. I just know I was lying on a trolley, I was getting oxygen, and I was, just feeling as if I was dying. I wasn't given any morphine, no painkiller, nothing. When I eventually was moved up to a ward, I had to phone my children at home to get them to come up to see if someone would give me painkiller. I mean,
and again,
you want to set me back in the A&E, right?
And just again, it's for clarity. You said that after 17 hours, eventually, when a doctor saw you, he or she realised immediately.
There's a he.
That he realised immediately that you needed to be admitted very urgently.
ASAP.
And as best as you know, or from your family, was that the first time that there was a recognition that you were actually quite critically ill, or was your sense that they realised that earlier but couldn't do anything about it? So
I never saw a doctor. No doctor spoke to me. The decision made about my chest and lungs was made by a nurse. I didn't see. Now, there must have been doctors maybe putting drips in or whatever, and I do know that my veins wouldn't be that good, but I mean, somebody should have been able to get something into veins in my arms or the back of my hands or whatever, as opposed to tying me down to a bed with these things in my feet. I was unconscious, really, effectively. I was very ill.
And again, were your family, you say your children, were your children with you when you were in the emergency department?
Yes, they were told, they were sent to the relatives' room, they were told I was critically ill, very critically ill. They were told that, they weren't told anything more then after that. They just came with me to keep an eye on me, to watch me, and they went home about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then one of my daughters who's here came up early the next morning. Now, I'm telling you what they told me. I do not have a record of what happened to me. That will be in my hospital notes.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is from what your children said, one of the issues that we are looking at is how people and relatives are communicated with.
Yes, yes.
are involved and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Is your sense that your children were aware of what was happening to you or not?
They were aware that I was critically ill, but they saw that nothing was happening to me. And this caused them great stress and great concern. I mean, I probably had a fluid drip up. I probably may have been given intravenous antibiotics, but I couldn't be sure of that. I definitely wasn't. The nurse who was minding me in recess said to me, I will be with you now for the next few days when we move you from here. And I assumed, obviously, I'd be going to high dependency, which I've been in before, you know, and I thought that was what was going to happen to me. I certainly never felt that I was going to be left lying on a trolley. And then I just went in and out of consciousness. I didn't have any sense of anybody running about doing anything for me or, you know, even checking on me.
Can I take you through, when you were admitted, you were admitted originally then into the Royal, was that into a kind of intermediary ward just to have you admitted, or were you admitted to where you needed to be with the specialist care you needed?
I certainly wasn't admitted to where I needed to be. When someone has multiple medical conditions, for each condition you have a consultant. So each consultant, one is responsible for my diabetes, one would be responsible for my thyroid problem, one is responsible for my heart problem, one is responsible for the bronchiectasis disease I have. So nobody treats me holistically. This is one of the things that I was going to say that I think should really be done and should be on my notes as I'm from now. On the front of my notes it says allergic to penicillin. And it's always said in the front of my notes, and there's an asterisk sort of beside it. And I would be asked occasionally by doctors, well, how do you know you're allergic to penicillin? Well, I don't know, because I was only 3 or 4, you know, I mean, and I'm now 65. But when I'm admitted to hospital, it should say on a sticker on the front of my notes that I have these multiple comorbidities. It should, whether it's a special colour sticker or whatever, because then that would give somebody an idea of who should be seeing me, or maybe there should be some special unit or some group of doctors who are trained to deal with people holistically. I mean, I'm presently having treatment for a cancer, for a tumour I had in my right eye, which has meant I've lost my lower eyelid in my right eye. And I mean, it's resulted in the tumour being removed, and I'm having plastic surgery, you know, to improve my good looks. So I'm saying that sarcastically, but this has been done as a day patient. This has been done to me as a day patient. This is how I feel patients should be treated. I wouldn't need to lie in a hospital bed when I can lie quite happily at home if need be. And I mean, I go up, and I go up quite often. But I have heard on numerous occasions from doctors, oh no, you can't go home because you need to be given intravenous antibiotics. You know, that's probably maybe a bit conjoined, you know, but why can there not be little separate units to deal with specific things by the same nurses that I see, the same nurses, the same doctors, 2 doctors, one who did the surgery and one who does the plastic surgery?
Can I then bring you to, in terms of the emergency department, having gone from the emergency department...
Where nobody wanted me, nobody knew, nobody would even bother trying to investigate. The one thing they did was give me an X-ray. You know, what they can do in resus.
Yeah. You were then admitted to the Royal.
Yeah.
You were then eventually moved from the Royal to the Belfast City Hospital.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about how that happened?
Well, when I was in the Royal, I was moved around to various wards. No one knew if I was being treated. The infection I had was really right through my body. So it was in my brain, in my chest, in my lungs, in absolutely everything. And because I have this disease, bronchiectasis, I know that I was very, very unwell. But no particular consultant came to see me, you know, who dealt with these things. It just was whoever was around. A diabetic consultant came to see me, and then I maybe would have been moved to another ward. But I mean, it was just wards because I'm a geriatric, it was wards with old people in. At one time, beside me, and this makes me feel very emotional, beside me in one bed was a lady who lay the whole time with her mouth wide open and no teeth, no false teeth in whatsoever. And she was lying with her head back in the pillow, and she was like that the whole time I was in the bed beside her. And about tea time, her relatives came up to see her. And I heard them, you know, they were fussing. Oh, look, she's still lying there. She's not moving. I heard them ask a nurse, how's she been today? She doesn't seem to be moving. Oh, I heard the nurse saying, oh, she had a big bowl of porridge this morning. Well, now, I had to say something to those relatives. I had to. And because of the culture of fear of people speaking out, it nearly had come to me as a patient. I think this is why I've now built myself to courage to speak out. I nearly was afraid to say anything in case the nurse heard me talking to relatives and saying, you know, telling something that wasn't the right thing to tell. I said to the relatives, if that was my mother lying there, there were about 5 or 6 of them, I would have a rota and I would stay with her. And then, of course, I heard she was being moved to the city, so I knew that was downhill anyway. But I heard them tell that she'd had this porridge, etc. So I said to them, look, stay with her. She's going to be moved in an ambulance. Go with her. One of you stay with her all the time. You should be there to know what's going on with her. I mean, to hear somebody say she had a big bowl of porridge. Bad.
Can I ask you again, when you were moved from the Royal
I'll move on to that.
To the Belfast City Hospital, just take us through and the communication and how that was dealt with.
Before I was moved to the City Hospital, I want to say to you about the dreadful experiences I had in the Royal. 2 experiences. One was really horrific that made me actually decide I'm not going back, and that's the one I'm going to tell you about. I was in a small ward with about 5 other people, and there was a lady in the bed across from me, and the curtains were round her, and then they were opened, and her daughter, she had one daughter, one child only, and her daughter was there all the time, had come from London and was very concerned about her and very careful, whatever. Now, I heard the consultant saying to another doctor at the bottom of my bed, before he'd spoken to this lady or her daughter, that we think it started in the ovaries. And really, I shouldn't have heard that. I heard that before the woman was told this. I just think that sorry, you're going to say I shouldn't say that?
I didn't hear what you said.
So I must be caught too. I heard the doctor saying to another doctor, we think it started in the ovaries. Then he went back, eventually, so the 2 doctors hemmed and hawed, then they went back over to the patient's bed, and I heard the doctor telling this lady that they could do nothing for her. And she said, but I'm only 71. I mean, can you not do anything? And he said, well, not really. And this is what he then said to her. Now, if you would like someone saying this to you or your mother, I would be very surprised. He said, look, it's our job to worry about what happens to you, what you get, the treatment you get. We'll worry about that. What you just need to worry about, if you would like a sandwich or something from Marks and Spencer's or a wee bun or something, you worry about that. You can get that organised. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe. I then heard the nurses encouraging this daughter to go home. This is the bit that I just find appalling. The nurses encouraged the daughter to go home, and they said, we will be taking care of your mother. As the doctor had said, that's our job, we'll be taking care of her. When the daughter had gone, in the middle of the night, the woman was squealing and crying in agony. I had eventually to get out of my bed, because when there's older people or geriatric people or whatever, you know, your instant desire is to help. Let me help you. And I had to get out of bed and go outside to see if I could find a nurse. And the nurse was changing ink in a printer. Her hands were covered in printer ink. And a doctor was sitting at a computer. And I mean, eventually the nurse came in and gave. The woman was moved to a private room then, and she was dead within 24 hours.
I'm going to
move
you back to how you were moved from hospital. Because
right.
Remember,
this is
an inquiry about accidents and emergency.
Yeah.
And obviously this is still relevant to you were moved into a ward.
Yes, but when you go through accident emergency, remember it's to fight for a bed in a hospital. I'm telling you, the things I saw in the hospital, you wouldn't want a bed in the hospital. The old lady who was sitting, who got her lunch, let me finish this one bit, who got her lunch served to her, which was a dish of soup with stretch and seal over the top of it. And she lifted her spoon and she was trying to eat her soup through the stretch and seal. I mean, I just had to, well, what happened then was somebody said something to my children about I was going to be moved to the city. Now, my heart just went, well, that's me finished, that's the end of me, because my assumption was when you move to the city, it's downhill all the way. Now, when I did move to the city, I got no treatment that was any different that I couldn't have been given in the Royal. In the middle of the night, a nurse came over to me and she said, you're going to the city, and it was quite dark, the nice nurses were on. It was totally dark. 2 ambulance men who never opened their mouths, who never spoke to me the whole time, came with a chair, and I said, look, I'm not able to get into a chair, I am so ill. I had to get into the chair, I had no choice, and I said, is there not even something, a trolley you could wheel me on? The seat I was in was tied inside a really, really old, rickety ambulance. And all I was doing was sitting, moaning. It must have gone over every bump and hole there was in the road between the Royal and the city. And I was delivered to the city hospital. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody said a word. I arrived at a ward, and the ward was the ward for people who have kidney disease, you know, I mean, because nobody knew where to send me or where to put me. And they just said, oh, there's your bed there. That was it. Any treatment I got in the city could have been given in the Royal. I mean, there was nothing done to me. I didn't get extensive scans, or I didn't get, I mean, I am very, very unhappy with what I've seen happen to older people. And why I'm doing this is saying I'm an old person now, and it's happening to me, and it's going to happen. I mean, nobody should be put in a rickety old ambulance and transported somewhere. That I had no dignity, I had nothing, certainly no self-respect, and just dumped in a bed in the city hospital.
Could I ask you, was it a Northern Ireland ambulance service?
Haven't a clue.
Or was it a Red Cross ambulance?
Haven't a clue.
It's not all.
I haven't a clue, but it was an ambulance. It was a rickety old, and the seat was tied inside it. They definitely weren't wearing red crosses or, you know, anything like that. My assumption was it was ambulance men. They may have had yellow coats. Remember, I was extremely ill at this stage. It's very hard to recount, you know, how you are when you're very ill, and that seems to be very useful to people who run hospitals, that, you know, the patient's ill, and then if they die, it's even better. We've got rid of them. You know, my view, not.
Can I ask you how many times you moved from ward to ward in the Royal?
In the Royal. Sorry, yeah.
I'm going to ask the question again because I'm not sure everybody will hear it. Yeah.
I'm just asking how many wards you were moved to in the Royal.
I would have been in probably 3 or 4 wards. None.
Is that including the resus?
No, not including. I mean, the resus and accident and emergency is about getting a bed in the Royal. That's how everybody now sees it, you know, getting a bed in the hospital. Well, sorry, when I went to the hospital with my broken foot, got my foot plastered up by a nurse who was wonderful, who stayed the whole time with me and stayed when she should have gone home. And I then had to stay in that night because I couldn't walk and I had to have a wheelchair. But if it's something like that, that can be treated in A&E and you can be discharged. But when you are critically ill, you need to get into a bed somewhere. You need to know what's going on. You need to know why you're feeling so bad. If someone had told me about my infection markers, you know, being as bad as that probably would have given me a bit of comfort, because then within me, I would have fought really hard to get better. I want to get better. I don't like being sick.
Do you think part of your problem was that people didn't communicate with you?
Nobody communicated with me.
In terms of why you were getting the drips in your foot?
Yeah, nobody.
Why you weren't getting painkillers or morphine? Why you were being moved? Why you were being moved to the city? Because the Royal they clear their beds
Yeah.
because they have A&E.
Yeah.
And they have to keep the throughput.
Yeah.
So therefore, patients are moved to the city or to the Mater.
Yes.
So that they but did anyone explain that to you?
No. I mean, and now I know that gynecology has been moved to the Mater Hospital as part of this new structuring. And you see, my expectation has been from Christmas that things were going to change. Things were going to change, and the minister had said he'd so much money and evidence was going to take place that we would actually see change in A&E. Nothing has changed. In fact, I would consider it's worse. I have a brother-in-law who's sitting at home now, and he is very, very ill, and he's terrified of going, a very articulate, educated man, he's terrified of going to A&E because he has multiple problems. They can't handle it. Maybe because they're junior doctors, maybe because the nurses aren't trained enough, perhaps, but there should be different, even the fact that I'm telling them, it shouldn't be me who makes these recommendations. I can only tell you the experiences I had, and I would say, yes, if you've something broken, there should be a department that deals with that. If you have multiple complex illnesses, there should be one person who's there who can deal with you holistically. And until that's done, you're not going to have people not dying, particularly geriatric people. And remember, our population, isn't it 45% of our people are going to be in the, they're going to be geriatrics. So, I mean, how will that be dealt with? How will these figures be dealt with? I want, again, to reiterate, I want every person who has had a bad experience in A&E and even in the hospital with their relative, with their mother, their father, or anyone they know, to come to your meetings and speak out. Because until you have the opportunity to hear all these people speaking out, it's very easy to come to one of these, and I could have gone on and on about the wonderful treatment I got when I broke my ankle. Broke my foot, broke my 5th metatarsal. But to me, that's to be expected. I would be expecting that in the hospital. That's what you go to a hospital for. I mean, sorry.
I'll ask you 2 questions here. One is you've clearly had very, very different experiences in 2 different occasions that you've been to the emergency department. What do you think it was that made one of the experiences so bad and the other experience so good?
Because with any illness, people constantly say to me, but you look really well. As if I have to look sick or if I have to have one arm shorter than the other. I mean, I can't show anything to people about what's going on inside my body. I had a broken foot. You couldn't have missed it. I couldn't walk. It was totally swollen. The nurse immediately was able to say, in fact, I think she said to me, I think it's your 5th metatarsal that you've broken. Now, I'm embarrassed to tell this because what actually happened was I slipped out of my shoe. I can't wear big high-heeled shoes. It was even more embarrassing. And I mean, for that reason, she dealt with it herself. The nurse did it. I never saw a doctor. She sent me round for an x-ray, came back. She plastered my foot. She then tested to see if I could walk on crutches. And she made it quite clear that I could not walk on crutches. And for that reason, I had to stay in that night.
Final question from me. In terms of, you said one thing that would be really important, which is a more holistic...
Yes, holistic approach to patients.
What other recommendations would you have to both us in terms of this inquiry and in terms of some of the other people who would have appeared today?
Right. One of the main recommendations that I'd be saying is ask where this money has been spent. What is this budget that the government have or give? I mean, we're talking about billions of pounds, but nobody seems to be accountable for where this money has been spent. There's no sign or evidence in accident and emergency about how things have changed. Everything was going to change. And I mean, there should be some accountability for money before you start throwing good money after bad. And I think you should be asking, the public are entitled to do this. They've paid their taxes. This is their hospital. This is their national health service. And I mean, you can't throw billions of pounds at people and not see any sign of it being spent properly. That's something I feel very strongly about. I wouldn't give any more money to anybody till I saw how the money they have has been spent. because they're going to be just more of the same. More of the same, and I'll be dead and in the ground, and nothing will have changed. Somebody has to speak up. Somebody has to change this. This cannot be allowed to continue. It can't be allowed to continue. It's just becoming worse and worse. Well, that's me anyway.
Okay.
I'm sure you were tired listening to me.
No. Can I check with either of my colleagues have any questions before we wrap up and thank you?
Deirdre, I just wanted to thank you very much indeed for taking the time and trouble to provide us with written evidence and oral evidence this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
But I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. Can you tell me any other public meeting where a receiver of health service, the active receiver, has been able to sit in public and tell what happened to them? You write a letter, you complain, you go through a process, it goes to somebody, and then you have to go to meetings to meet people who work on boards and somebody else. Nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens. A friend of mine was at A&E in the last 8 weeks. She sat for 7 hours before she saw a doctor. She again was a geriatric like myself. She complained because she said the walls of A&E now have big signs. To me, that's pathetic. Big signs saying if you have a complaint, do this, do that, do whatever. Nothing has happened. She's heard nothing. They just became frustrated. And what do? You just say, oh, I'll give up. You know, I couldn't be bothered. What's the point? I'm feeling better. I'm not going to give up. I'm determined not to give up.